De is in or the. De is just like, more of specifying, as in we use the, sa- same way we use de. For example, de facto, which is in fact. Likewise, we have de futuro, in the future. For example, the law will be enforced with more strictness de futuro, which means that the law will now be enforced with more strictness for the future days, right, or future regions. Right. Next is the integro, which is in the whole. Integro, you can memorize this by integrity or integral, which is togetherness, right? So integro is integrity. The jur is in law, right? For example, we've just done that, right? Jur stands for law or jury. Next, we have de lege ferendo, that is how the law should be. And then another one, de lege lata, that is how the law is. Now, lege is obviously law, right? De is the. Now, de lege ferendo is that how I feel the law must be. And de lege lata is how it is. For example, if I say the convicts of the people who are tried in eve teasing. So let's say the convicts of eve teasing must be hanged to death de lege ferendo. If I, being a layman, I say that a convict of a person who is convicted of eve teasing must be hung till death de lege ferendo. That is how what I feel, right? And actually what happens is that might be he's imprisoned for, like, say 6 months, or and he has to pay a fine of 50,000 rupees. So a convict of eve teasing is imprisoned for 6 months and has to pay a fine of 50,000 rupees de lege lata. That is how the law is actually. And what I feel that he must be hung to death, so that becomes de lege ferendo. Next is de novo, that is the new. So novo you can memorize as new. Novel, right? Novel is something that is new. Next we have de minimis, that is smallest things, very small things, right? And based on this we have two legal maxims like de minimis non curate lex, that is the law doesn't concern itself to smallest things, right? So you have to like, how can you memorize this? De minimis is smallest things, non means not, and lex is law again. So the law is not concerned with the smaller things, right? So you cannot sue a guy who has stolen your pen or pencil, or he appropriated your toothpick, right? So that is not non-convictable. So the law will not concern itself with small things, right? Like we have de moritinis, mortinis or minimis, one and the same thing. So de mortinis means small, or the smallest things. Nil nisi bonum. Bonum is good. Nil is not, again, that is zero. Right? How do I memorize it? De mortinis, that is nil nisi bonum, which is in the actual translation you'll get to understand it means of the dead conversation, that is speak nothing unless good. I'll explain it to you in the way that it means that if you're not speaking anything which is good or which may be beneficiary, then better not to speak anything, just stay mum. In Latin, the legal maxim would be de mortinis nil nisi bonum. If you're not speaking anything good, then better not speak itself. Like de meant the, it means and. And. For example, et al, which means and others. L comes from ali, which is the others, right? Other, it means others in um, Latin. Now, I'll again refer to the Salman Khan case. So, for example, there's a common judgment being passed. So, judge might say Salman Khan et al are found guilty in this case. That is, the that is Salman Khan and others are found guilty in the case. So et al means and others. Likewise, we have et cetera, which is and other things. That is so forth. This law will be the law states that both the people riding a two-wheeler have to wear a helmet et cetera. That is from now onwards, right? So that is how we sequence it, right? Likewise, we have et sec, that is and the sequence. For example, you're presenting the documents and the written uh, an affidavit. So you'll say the affidavit, the hereby I assign all these properties to Mr. So and so. The documents are of which et sec, right? So they are placed in the sequence. So in the sequential documents, we have the other required documents. If there's a sequence of documents, we say they are arranged in et sec. They're in sequence. Et aksa, which means wife, and et where means husband. Now, how do we differentiate that? Is for example, the main convict is the wife. So we'll say, let's say her name is Martha. So we'll say Martha et we are found guilty. That means Martha and her husband are found guilty. Likewise, if the main convict is the husband and let's say his name is Bob, so I'll say Bob et Aksar are found guilty. That is, Bob and his wife are found guilty. Next, we have X, which is from or on. For example, ex ante, that is on before, that is before the event, right? So before the event, this thing happened. So there was a party going on ex ante Martha's death, which means before Martha's death, there was a party going on in her place or wherever. Ex cathedra, that is from the chair. Cathedra, basically it refers to the chair of a person or the position of a person. By chair I mean the position, the responsibilities that he holds. So it could be a president. So if he has passed something, a law, or he has passed a judgment, or he has passed anything, so whatever he has passed is ex cathedra, that is by the authority of his position. So for example, your boss, anybody's boss, had the ability to fire the employee, right? Why can he do that? Is because he has the authority ex cathedra, that is from the authority of his chair. His position allows him to do so. Next, we have in ex concessus, which means from what has been conceded, or it is also termed as guilt of association. You'll get to better understand this when we take an example. Now, for example, you meet someone and he's giving you a lecture on how we must preserve the environment, and we all are culprits, and you people are culprit. You must, you're the main reasons for environmental degradation and pollution. You can say that even you're not the one who's who has the sanctity related to it. No, because even you lead to even you are associated to the environmental pollution. Why? Because there is ex consensus. How? Even that person, let me take the most the most basic thing. Even he drives a car which leads to air pollution. So, in the concealed manner, in a disguised manner, even he is associated to a crime, or something that is bad. So, he has a guilt of association related to this very crime, or this very thing, or this very situation. So, this sort of thing is known as in ex concessus. Even he is related to the crime, according to the guilt of association. So, that way we say ex concessus. Next, we have ex facie, which means on the face of. Facie relates to face, so you can very well imagine ex facie would mean on the face of. Ex fida bona, which means good business norms. Now, bona is good, and obviously it comes from bonum, and fid is trust. right? So since the business flows in trust and bona is good, so ex vita bona means the good business norms. Ex delicto, we already know that delicto stands for, or delict stands for the crime. So ex delicto from the crime scene. Now, for example, the policeman gets an evidence and he can present it into the court that I received, for example, this gun ex delicto. That is, I got this gun at the crime scene. Ex gratia, that is by the favor. For example, you're working with a NGO, a voluntary work. Such a work that you're doing is ex gratia. That is, you're just doing it for the favor of, you're favoring them. Gratia relates to gratefulness, right? So that way you can memorize it. Ex officio, which means from the office. So if there's a law being passed, so that becomes ex officio. Ex parte, which means from one party, right? So I mean, if there's one person who's representing the other, the entire party, say the ex parte says this. That is, my entire party says this, has to say this. So that becomes ex parte. Ex post means from after. After something, let's say, we'll take an example of tsunami that happened in India, right? So after the tsunami, people have started building houses at a little higher height from the ground, at a level from the ground, at a level that is a little higher from the ground level. Because from that knowledge, they have developed this, thing that we must build this house. So that knowledge has come ex post tsunami. That is from the past, or from their past, from the knowledge of their past, from their experience of tsunami. So that becomes ex post. Many a times you'll come across words that have res in them, and the res is nothing but it is anything, matter, issue, or affair that we are considering. So it relates to anything, person, place, the affair, or any transaction that we're referring to. Res means anything, matter, issue, or affair. For example, res communis, that is common to all. Anything which everybody, the entire community can use. How can you memorize? Communis relates to community, right? It is homophonic. So, res communis means anything that is common to all. For example, the fundamental rights, they are res communis. They are common for everybody. Everybody has the right to use those rights, right? So they are made for everyone. It is a property of everybody. So that becomes res communis. That is, it is common to all. Next, we have the doctrine of res ipso loquitur, which means that the thing speaks for itself. Now, whenever there's a contract between two people or two parties, the party that is supplying the goods or the service is expected to, give the services in a very good manner, which is known as, or which is termed as, the duty of care with the uh, supplier. Now, if there is a breach of duty of care, we say that the things have this breach is very much imminent in the sequence of activities of where the negligence was shown. Now, I'll give you an example of a restaurant. Now, for example, you go for a dinner in a restaurant and you find that first of all there was no person who came on time to take your order, and then you also find that the order that was delivered was very late. When it was delivered, the dishes were cold. Some of the dishes were even, they had strands of hair in them. No, these were some of the events wherein you could very easily say that the supplier has not done his duty nicely. And how can you say that? Because these activities prove this thing, right? So, how can you prove this? By using the doctrine of res ipso loquitur, which says that the things speak for themselves, the activities speak for themselves. And how can you memorize this? Is that because res means the affair or the issue, and loquitur comes from loc, which means to speak. So, res ipso loquitur means the things speak for themselves. Next, we have res judicata, which is the case is adjourned. Res, we obviously know, is the case or the issue or the matter, and judicata is that it is judged. Judicata from judgment, so it is judged, right? And the case is adjourned, that is, the judgment has been passed. Next is res nullis, that is nobody's property. Now, for example, all these public parks, they are nobody's property actually. You cannot uproot them and take them at your place. That is, there's a function and I need some extra arrangement. I need to arrange for extra sitting, so I'll take I'll uproot this bench from the park and I'll use it in my home. No, you cannot, because it is not your property. Rather, it is nobody's property. It is res nullis. That is, nobody owns this thing. Yes, you can use it, but it is not owned by you. You're not the owner of this thing. Next is res publica, which is the exact full form of republic, which is a public affair. So we all know what is republic. So the actual word for republic is res publica. Next is res sub judice. Now, for example, if there is a case and it will take 2 or 3 sittings, now what happens is when the judgment is not passed on the same day, the judgment is res sub judice. That is, the judgment is now suspended to the next hearing. The case is suspended to the next hearing. It is different from judicata, wherein the judgment is passed, and sub judice means that the judgment is suspended to the next hearing. In is a very, very important root. In has 2 meanings. The first is against. For example, in the case of in personam, which is against one person. Now, for example, this case, he had the intentions of harming in personam. That is, the intentions were to harm one person, right? And in rem means against the whole world. The entire world is it can be harmed using some or the other thing. The other meaning of in is within. We all know that in means within. So in, for example, in absenta is in the absence. Now, for example, there is only one party at the present in the court at the time of judgment. So the judgment is passed in absenta of the other party. That is when the other party is not present. Likewise, we have in camera, that is in a chamber, that is in a concealed manner, in the hidden manner. Now, all those cases, for example, in India, we have the case of Kasab, right? That case is really very important, as well as it is very crucial because it cannot be publicly dealt, right? Because there are so many people, he may be harmed within the court itself. So such cases are held in hidden chambers of the court. They are hidden, not exactly hidden chambers, but yes, they are not judged publicly. For example, Yaqub Menon's hanging, it was passed in camera, that is, nobody knew it was happening. It was concealed from the outer world. In curia is in court, which is open to everybody. Everybody knows that this proceeding is going on in some or the other chamber of the court. In essay is in existence, that is, there is a threat in essay, that is, supposing if I am talking about any state, for example, I talk about Syria, there is terrorism in essay in Syria. That is, Syria is the victim of terrorism in essay. That is, the terrorism exists there. But if there is a potential of something, but it is not actually present, so it becomes in posse, which means that there is a potential. For example, there's a cold vibe going on in some state. So we say the terrorism is in posse in that state. That is, there is a potential that there might be the case reported of terrorists attacking. Next is in extenso, that is in the extended form, which is when you have explained it to very, very deep manner, that is very, very nicely, very deeply. So that is in extenso. In extremis, to the extreme. These are very easy to interpret because extremis comes from extreme. Extenso comes from extend. In futuro, that is in the future, something related. That now this rule will be used, or this rule will be followed in future. That is till like eternally, sort of eternally. In limine, that is in the limits. In loco parentis, that is in the place of parents, wherein the parents specify. For example, the teacher is hired to teach the child in loco parentis, which means that the teacher would go and teach the child wherever the parents ask him or her to teach. Right? How do we remember this? Loco comes from location, and parentus is obviously parents, right? So you be very easily you can judge out what does it mean. Likewise, the mean comes from limits, so you'll be able to memorize this as well. Likewise, we have in omnibus, that is in all, right? Omni is every. We all know that. Omni is every. So in omnibus is in all, something like consensus ed item that we've already done. In pari delicto. Now we already know delicto stands for the crime or offense, and pari comes from par, which means equality. Right? So in pari delicto means in the equal crime or in the equal offense. Now, for example, the same case of Salman Khan and Tabu. Tabu has been supposedly she's put to the sentence for like 2 or 3 months, which is equal to what Salman Khan is being done. So we'll say Tabu has been sentenced for 2 months in pari delicto, that is in the same offense in which Salman Khan has been sentenced. In pari materia, in the same matter. Now how do we differentiate? In pari delicto is crime, materia comes from material or matter. Likewise, we have in situ, that is in the site or position. In situ is also used in chemistry, that is the reaction happens in situ, that is in this very site itself, in this place itself. So in situ is in position. In toto means in totality. Likewise, we have inter, which means among, as in the case of inter alia, that is among others, and among the people, among all the people. In rusticos, that is in the rustics, that is old things, right? Inter se, that is among themselves. Inter vivos, vive stands for the life, right? So inter vivos, between the living beings, because here vivos, that is vive or wit, which we've already done in the lecture of our word roots. You can refer to that video. White stands for life, so this is very essential for life, right? From where we got vitamins. So inter vivos means between the living beings. Likewise, we have intra means within, so like intra legem is law. So generally we say all these business activities must be conducted intra legem, that is as per the law, within the limits of the law. Likewise, you have intra fossis terra, within the jaws of the lands, that is the territory, the marked territory, right? So I cannot move to Pakistan directly because I'm an Indian. Why? Because there is intra fossis terra, that is I can stay within the jaws of the land. Intra vires, that is in the power, within the power. So if your position allows you to take a decision within your power, so that is intra vires. And the opposite of intra is ultra. So intra vires, the opposite would be ultra vires, right? Now let's discuss certain other important roots which have been asked in the CLAT exams. So these are very important. For example, there is sign. Sign is without. Both these legal maxims are really important. The first is damnum sine injuria. Now we already have discussed that damnum stands for damages, right? And injuria stands for injury. So damnum sine injuria means that there are damages but there is no injury. For example, let's say there is a big brand that entered into the local market. Now what happened is that because it's a big brand, everybody started going to this big brand and started buying stuff, and the local players were affected. So they had to suffer damages, the monetary damages, but there was no injury to their legal entity or their physical entity. There was no injury to the legal entity, but yes, they had to suffer damages. So this is damnum sine injuria. Injuria sine damnum is an injury without damages. there's a very important case of Astrid versus the versus White, wherein the person was refused to take part in the elections. So what exactly happened was that she wanted to take part and she wanted to stand in the elections of the committee, and wherein the person refused to take her, her appeal, but due to which she lost the election. So there was an injury to her legal entity, which wherein she was refused to contest in the elections, but as her candidature was actually refused, but there were no damages. So this was an injury to her legal entity without any damages. So this is an example of injuria sine damnum. Likewise, we have qua, which means which. Sine qua non, which is sine qua non. This is a very important maxim, right? Next is carte blanche, which is extreme power, right? If I have to use it in an English sentence, I'll say the father gave Martha carte blanche to buy anything in the market. So she had this extreme power and go and spend anywhere and how much, it's up to her. Right. Likewise, we have hoi polloi, which is commonplace, everybody's place, right? Also, we have force majeure, which is unforeseen circumstances. For example, that there's a contract between you and me, but we don't know that the governments of our states will start fighting with each other, and there would be no. It won't be possible for us to actually, have this transaction. So that becomes force majeure. That is unforeseen circumstances. Well, that gets us to the end of the discussion of legal vocabulary. I'll just suggest you that study a lot of legal words, because this is a very important question in your legal exams, in your law entrance tests. And again, please do not think that the legal terms mean same in both the languages, that is English and the legal language. They might mean different. So just break the words that we were doing. You might have understood a lot many words. If not, just refer back to the video. You can redo the entire video and you'll be able to do that easily. So just break the words, try and make certain roots, make certain keys for yourselves, like we were doing in toto. So toto comes from total. So in toto would mean in totality, right? So that way, just make certain keys for yourself and try and memorize these words. Thank you and have a nice day.